Hey, everybody, it's Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Jim Petersen, Gophers legend, St. Louis Park, Minnesota legend, NBA player, now commentator for the Timberwolves. He's going to join us in the Hang on Ron Johnson segment. And we have to talk about something because D'Lo was subtracted, and they added Mike Conley. I have a take on that. Jim P has a take on that. We'll get Sam's take on that. Of course, we want to know what you guys think, but Jim Peterson brings up a great point about team chemistry, and we'll talk about all that coming up next on the Ron Johnson Show.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now the Ron Johnson Show. On the field, in the broadcast booth, Ron Johnson is Minnesota sports. He's played with them, hung out with them, and grown up with all the big names in Minnesota sports. They're hanging out with Ron Johnson. It's the Ron Johnson Show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. And it starts now.
Hey, everybody, it's Ron Johnson. Gophers wide receiver, Gophers Hall of Famer, NFL wide receiver, and this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcast Network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Just make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. And if you want an easy one, I'm going to probably say you should bet the Timberwolves money line at home versus the Mavs. The Mavs, Kyrie, Luka, but Luka doesn't move as fast as he used to with that leg injury. The Timberwolves, they kind of play bully ball when it comes to trapping guards at the top of the key. So I think an easy one, an easy winning $5 bet could be just putting it on the Twins to win. Don't even worry about the points, but if you want to take the points for a little added bonus, take the points. But the Timberwolves will beat the Mavs in game one at home, Minneapolis, on Wednesday. They are the hosts of the Western Conference Finals. I don't think anybody thought that would happen unless they were the number one seed. Also, you can find our show on Amazon Fire, Roku, and YouTube 24/7. You get all your sports shows, all your content from Locked On Sports Minnesota. Please make sure you subscribe on YouTube. We thank you. We are so grateful for all the listeners and the everydayers to this point. You guys know how I feel about basketball. So as I bring Sam Extraman to the show, I'm going to talk about it. I'm a former high school basketball player, like most good football players, receivers specifically, and tight ends. We all kind of played a little basketball in high school. And so I grew up a Bulls fan. I grew up watching the Pistons. I grew up in an era where there was a no-fly zone. There was no friendship in this. And that's why, Sam, I start off with that. I loved the way the ending of the Nuggets game happened because there was no friendship in that ending. There was no farewells and hugs and kisses. There was a bye-bye, and then I'm going to throw it off the ground and one mixtape dunk on you. And then, I think KCP is who it was. He was like, no, you ain't about to finish the game out like this. And then I don't know if you noticed, Jokic was petty because he could have just grabbed the ball and dribbled it out, but he dribbled all the way down and he went for the dunk. And then the Timberwolves was all right, let's stop playing, man. Let's leave this alone. Let's end this game off. And then there's leaked audio. I don't know if you saw that. I forgot the company that does it, but they get the sideline audio and then they leak it. Clearly somebody within the building is passing this audio on to these guys. But Jokic goes up to Anthony Edwards like, why? I just want to go play with my horses. Why are you doing this? And Anthony Edwards kind of looks at the scoreboard like, man, look at the scoreboard, man. That's why, because it's time for y'all to go home. Bye. Like, this ain't no friend. Like, I'm not nice. Like, yeah, I'm a sportsman. I'm having fun, but I don't need to be nice to y'all. Y'all was talking all this crap when we were down 3-2. Keep that same energy now that y'all walking out the door. Michael Malone, they pulled up his old video from when they won last year, and he's like, we're going to run it back. We're going to run it back. He had his chains on and sunglasses, and he's drinking and smoking, and we're going to run it back. And then they asked him now, the season's over. We lost, but we gave up a 20-point lead. Season's over. It doesn't matter. It hurts. Season's over. Like, keep that same energy. Like, where was that same energy of we're going to repeat? We're up 3-2. We're this, we're that. They, blah, blah, blah. Anthony Edwards is not the greatest player in the world. He didn't have a great game, 6 for 24, but he found a way to win the game. I love what Dan Patrick said, partner on NBC Peacock. Dan Patrick this morning was saying that so many people jumped on the bandwagon of the Timberwolves when they were up 2-0. So many people jumped on the bandwagon when they thought the Nuggets were going to lose to the Timberwolves. Then the Nuggets go up 3-2 and win 3 straight. And everybody's off the bandwagon. The moment was too big. The Timberwolves couldn't get it done. Jokic is the best in the world. I told y'all this. Perk. I'm not always on Perk's side with some stuff because he kind of got me earlier when he talked about Kyrie versus Luka. That's why I'm glad this is coming because I got to find that clip of Perk because I'm gonna tweet it because I think Perk is petty enough to talk about it.
Yeah,
he made a comment a while back that said like, give me the Mavs, which is kind of a like, dude kind of saw this coming. He said, give me the Mavs over the T-Wolves, but give me the Mavs and the T-Wolves. He said because their best scorer, which is Anthony Edwards, is even with the second best scorer, Dallas, which is Kyrie Irving. I get where he's going with that, but it's just those two. They don't have a Jaden McDaniels that can give you 23. They don't have a Naz Reid that can give you 5 threes. They don't have a Mike Conley who's going to hit some sneaky threes every once in a while. And they definitely don't have a Gobert or karl-Anthony Towns that are going to give you putbacks, rebounds, and it's an all-around team. The Mavs are not built. They're built too high, and then everybody else gets in line. And so, but I will say when Perk said the Timberwolves are going to win anyway, he said they're going to get game 6. And they're going to pull it off in game 7. He said, I picked the Wolves in 7 to start this. I'm not changing now. He was one of the only ones on the panel doing that. So I got to give him his flowers there. But this is what I'll say about this one. Everybody that jumped off the bandwagon, stay off of it. Don't jump on it now. Like, I know you Minnesota fans watching this. You guys are all on board. You everydayers, you guys, I see the comments. I see it on the basketball party. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But you guys have been with us through this. But you guys from like Sacramento, Texas, Tennessee, Arkansas, Hawaii. Don't jump on it now because y'all was jumping off on it. Y'all jumped off. Like the minute y'all felt like Anthony Edwards couldn't get it done, y'all was off. So, Sam, I ask you this.
Yeah.
You see the ending of that game because we've seen endings of certain, and this is not a Pistons finally losing to the Bulls moment where Isaiah Thomas walks off the court. This was way different. This was not that like the rivalry may be created now, though, because now Jokic is pissed going into this offseason, and he's going to be looking to hunt now because the Timberwolves are now the hunted. No matter what happens, they are now the hunted team, at least for another 2 years with Mike Conley, karl-Anthony Towns, and Anthony Edwards. There's no sight of the breakup of the team under what everybody thought Mark Lowry and A-Rod were going to do. Glenn Taylor maybe is trying to save that and get maybe 2 or 3 championships out of this team. But Sam, when you saw that ending and you see kind of the Anthony Edwards pettiness, the Jokic, I mean, clearly it looked like they wanted to make a hard foul and really like push him into the stands, Pistons, Pacers. But what were your thoughts on that, the way it ended?
Yeah, I loved it. I too can appreciate the old school, the tension. We're not all friends out here. I thought it was great. I think that if the wave had been the only thing that happened, they probably get away with it. But then McDaniels going rogue with the dunk contest with 20 seconds to go. That was probably like, I bet the coaches probably whispered in his ear after that one, hey, we don't need to do that.
Right.
Because that was maybe a little uncalled for. But you said it. Rivalry is the word. Because these two teams are going to be in the same division. They're going to play each other 4 times a year. And there's a very good chance that they'll meet again in the playoffs down the road. They've already met 2 consecutive years in the playoffs, and it's 1-1. So rivalry, yes, absolutely. This is like one of the faces of the league in Jokic against one of the rising faces of the league in Edwards. It is perfectly scripted. And now, we've got some storylines. We've got the Murray thing, him throwing the heat pack. We've got Edwards going off. We've got, the sour grapes from Mike Malone after the game in the press conference. So it's all brewing into something that's going to be, I think, really intense for the next couple of years.
And one thing about the Mavs, this is the thing, like I said, they're built top heavy. Jim Pete's going to give us some insight into the Mavs. I'm not going to dive into it too much because he gives us a lot of insight on this Mavs team. They're bigs because I didn't really like I've watched the Mavs, but I've watched the Mavs maybe from afar. Like as a fan, when I turn on Mavs games, I watch Mavs Thunder for sure because I was wondering who was going to win this one. And it was really Kyrie, Luka led at the top of the key. Like it was them taking turns, trying to really figure out who's on, who's going to get going, and they both do it. Now he talks about their bigs who have high energy and they come in and they switch, but they don't do two bigs like the Timberwolves. They bring one big in, one big goes down the other. They run a small ball type of situation, so the Timberwolves have to be able to find ways to get Cat. I don't know about Rudy in the post, even though he did hit the fadeaway. They got to get Cat going in the post, and he's got to recognize when he did a great job, I will say, noticing when he had a little guy on him. He's just got to do better at positioning where like if they're pushing you, just let them push you. Don't push back to where you're going to get the offensive foul, because I think that's where he gets into trouble. He gets pushed, then he wants to push back. And like any kid with a brother or sister, the second kid that hits always gets caught. The first kid never gets caught. That first kid with that elbow, mom doesn't see that. Mom sees the second kid throw the other kid across the court. And that's where Karl-Anthony Towns kind of gets his hand caught in the cookie jar a lot. He gets maybe an off arm by somebody. He gets pushed, and then he tries to retaliate and get physical, and then he gets the whistle. And then he's doing the, what? What did I do? Like, you literally just ran this dude over. Like, you have to play better. And I love Jim Pete. Like, I never thought about that. Jim Pete was like, Karl-Anthony Towns thinks he's smaller than he is, because you can see him trying to fight through picks and get through small spaces, not realizing, dude, you are 6'10", 200 plus, like 250 plus pounds. You're not sneaking through any hole. You're not Kyrie. You're not Mike Conley. You can't sneak. You're not Steph Curry. You can't sneak through. But because he shoots threes, maybe he has a little person in his head, and he thinks he's this little person, and he's a giant. You can't sneak by the refs, and you can't sneak through. But when you look at this matchup, the one thing we are going to want to see, and I think it's going to come down to this, honestly, long term, Anthony Edwards and Kyrie, Luka and Jaden McDaniels. I think that's where it's going to be. And Jaden McDaniels, the fact that Jaden McDaniels can score an attack, I wonder who Luka's going to guard, because Luka doesn't want to guard Anthony Edwards. I don't think he can. I don't know if Kyrie wants to handle that. Like, I know Kyrie probably just wants to be on Conley. Like, man, let me take the point guard. Like, I'm good here. I wonder who they're going to put on, because Kyrie and Anthony Edwards seems like a mismatch in the post. And then Luka can't stay with him up top. I think that the Mavs are going to have a harder time matching up with the Wolves than the Wolves are with the Mavs. The Wolves have enough bodies that can move around and guard anybody. If they take like Rudy out and go Cat as a center, they can still get Naz Reid in, who can guard Luka as well. Like, he moves well for a big man. If he's on a switch and pick, he can guard Luka. If Jaden McDaniels switches off on Kyrie, I think he's fine up there. The one person I don't want to see much of this game, and I hate to say it, unless maybe it's just on Luka, because they both move, it's slow-mo. Like, I don't know if slow-mo can hang with a Kyrie and Dennis Smith Jr. and some of these guys. Like, he has to be for sure off the bench when their bench clears too. You can't use him in key situations like you did against Denver, because Denver didn't do as much with their main core besides, I think Slow-Mo did a great job with Joker, because he is undersized, but he's strong, or under height, but he's strong. So I could see him on a Luka, even because Luka doesn't move that fast and he is long. But I don't know if I want to see much else of him other than that. I know that's your guy, Sam. But when you look at this matchup, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. And by the way, Derek Jones Jr.
Derek Jones Jr.
Derek Jones Jr. Jones Smith, close. I think it's a different matchup, because you are going from a dynamic scoring big now to guys that can operate on the wing. Luka's physicality and his passing, though, is very Jokic-like in
Correct.
that he will punish you if you double him. And he's 6'7", 230. He will bully you around. So some people are wondering if Jaden can hold up, if Jaden is strong enough to hold up against him. I would try it. I mean, I think that Jaden is so lengthy that's still gonna harass Luka, get in his vision, affect his passing ability. I would definitely try Jaden, but then you got to throw other guys at him. You got to throw Edwards at him once in a while.
Yeah,
I think Slow-Mo, if you expect nothing from Slow-Mo on the offensive end, just throw him in for a couple minutes for defensive energy against Luka. I think that makes sense. If you just reduce his role down and ask him to be a defender who needles Luka, gets in his way, gets up in his jersey, and tries to shut him down for a couple of possessions. I think slowing Luka is key. But, the guy I'm circling, Ron, to close is PJ Washington, because that's a guy that they acquired at the deadline. The Wolves have not played Dallas with PJ Washington in the lineup yet. He hit so many big threes in that Thunder series. That's going to be the secret sauce, because if he is shooting well, kind of like how KCP and Porter went away, they got really quiet when the Nuggets lost. Washington's that guy that if he gets hot, then they become really tough to beat.
Yeah, and when you look at the size, they're long as well. PJ Washington 6'7". You got Daniel Gafford at 6'10". You got Derek Lively at 7'1", who comes in as an additional center. You got Tim Hardaway Jr., who's a small forward with some length. You got Luka. Technically, they have him and Kyrie both playing guard, off guard. Like, it doesn't really matter who brings it up anymore in today's NBA. So I'm looking forward to this on Wednesday. I think that's going to be the key. PJ Washington, Luka, Kyrie. How do they guard those three? Who's in there? Who takes who? Mike Conley on Kyrie. I think he's fine, but I also think he needs to admit when he needs like help or, hey, like he's getting by me. And that's why I wouldn't even mind, like, every once in a while bringing in one of your other backup point guards just to harass Kyrie a little bit and get a couple fouls. Because we know Kyrie, like, if you can force him to start forcing it, that's when him and Luka were not seeing eye to eye. Like, they were getting mad at each other for bad passes, bad shots, so on and so forth. But you know what? We got a long show today. We got to get to Jim Peterson, and then we're going to have a really quick Daily 3 today, but we got to get to Jim Peterson. I'm Ron Johnson. That's Sam Ekstrom, and we'll be back after word from our sponsors.
And we are brought to you today by FanDuel. The Timberwolves -4 against the Mavs in this series. Over under 207. The first basket scorer. That's always fun. Is Gobert going to get the first basket at +700? Is Conley going to get the first basket at +800? There are so many ways to enjoy watching the game, making every moment more with FanDuel, with Wolves, Mavs, as well as the other playoff series, as well as NHL playoffs, as well as Major League Baseball. You can enhance the experience with FanDuel, and new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Well, now it's time for the Hanging with Ron Johnson segment, and I always love to get Gophers in this, and this one is a special one. This guy played basketball at the University of Minnesota, St. Louis Park High School, just all around great NBA player as well, works for the Timberwolves. And this is a special season. I know I've talked to Jim before. He's invited me out to basketball games, so I've been extremely thankful to have him in my life. I've known him for a while, like back when his son was in high school at Benilde St. Margaret's. And so as I bring Jim Peterson to the show, I have to get into this. You've been a part of some of the craziest NBA moments due to one guy by the name of the Anthony Edwards. And there was a dunk where he dislocated his finger. That's the one I'm going to go to. And you and Michael Grady both kind of were like, whoa, what just happened? And then you kind of let the moment breathe, where a lot of commentators love to continue to like chomp on it and discuss it. You guys were like, let's let this crowd really see what really happened. Take us through that moment for you, though, like, because as an analyst, sometimes people are expecting you to explain it, and it was almost like there's nothing I can explain. Like, everybody saw it. So what was that moment like for you?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Ron. Yeah, no, this is it's great. You've had this podcast for a while. We see each other on football Saturdays too over at the University of Minnesota when I see you guys doing your thing. So you've had a great career too. You've done a really nice job of recreating. Like, we got to find something to do after we get done playing. So, we've kind of found our niche, both of us, doing media stuff. So it's been great. You know what? You've had Michael Grady on your show a couple times. You know how fantastic he is.
Oh yeah.
And it's when you're doing a radio call, I'm working with Alan Horton right now during the playoffs. Radio is more of a play-by-play medium.
Mm-hmm.
It's more for and the color commentator kind of fills in here and there when there are little holes, but you're describing action that people have to see. TV's different. TV is more of an analyst sport. So like, when you think about, describing that people can see what's going on the screen. So the play-by-play part of it is important, but it gives the analyst more time to talk. And so with Grady, he's so artful with his style. He's got the great pipes. and he's got a really great vocabulary, and the way that he calls the game, he's got all these tremendous calls. So the play that you're talking about, that was on the heels of him getting the block in Indiana. It was on the same road trip.
Oh yeah.
That block that he had against the Pacers won the game, but it was equally as death-defying. I mean, he hit his head on the backboard.
Yeah.
Heck, he hit his back on the backboard. He was almost horizontal underneath the backboard when he blocked that shot. It was unbelievable. So we go to Indy. He has the block. We go to LA, get beat by the Lakers. We play the Clippers on the same trip. So it's really nice when you get to play the Lakers and Clippers back-to-back. So we beat the Clippers. We're down 20, down 22, as a matter of fact, in that game, come back and win. So that was an incredible high. And then we go to Utah after that, and we play these 2 games in Utah. And, that dunk happened in the second game. And, we didn't have, our full complement of players. Towns was hurt at that time. But the play you're talking about, basically it just was, they're breezing into the front court, and Nikhil had the ball on the wing, and he just kind of throws it to Ant in the middle of the floor, and Ant just rises up, and I mean, you saw what happened. And one of the reasons why I kind of laid out was, first of all, Grady's call was so great. He went from just kind of plainly talking to going into this, like, the vibrato that was so powerful that he's able to control his vocal cords and go from, speaking normally into excitement and not overmodulate. And it was just it was one of those classic calls that's still being shown on TV. But for me, I was really more concerned about him looking at his hand right afterwards. I mean, he dislocated his ring finger on his left hand, pushing it down into John Collins's face. I mean, he dislocated his finger. And so he started looking at his hand, and my immediate reaction was, did he just break his finger? What's going to happen to our season? What's going to happen to our seeding? How's this going to impact our team? So I basically was stunned by the dunk and also, what happened afterwards and how that's going to affect our team.
Yeah. And it seems like, I mean, he's had the ankle, he's had the butt back now, he had the finger. It's almost like he's built of titanium or something. Like it's something about him, whether it's the adrenaline or just the youthfulness of being a 22-year-old and being able to get up. But he's not, like, he's scared the crap out of Minnesota fans across the world and nationally now, because he's becoming a national star. And to see a star go down, and then you're praying, like, I mean, look at Jalen Brunson with the Knicks. He goes out and the Knicks just lose it. You look at back when Chris Paul, hurt his hamstring, Kevin Durant, his Achilles. There's been some big injuries that the team kind of falls apart because they're built on having everybody, especially a guy like Anthony Edwards. But what is it about him right now that he can bounce back from these injuries?
Well, Ron, it was one of the things, 20 years ago when Kevin Garnett, when I first started broadcasting, Ticket was drafted in 95 and I started in 98 broadcasting games. And, he left in whatever it was, 2007. Just watching him, he would do the same thing. Like, he would roll an ankle or hyperextend a knee, and you'd be really concerned about him. And he would just, like, somehow shape shift or shake it off. He'd tighten up his shoe, or he'd go to the bench maybe for a little bit, but he'd come back. He did it all the time. And Ant has done that too. Like, Ant had a play in Detroit last year where he actually left the floor, and he was not supposed to come back, but he ends up coming back into the game and playing. He had a fall in Milwaukee that he laid on the ground for a long time and went to the bench. He didn't look like he was going to be able to play. He comes out of the timeout, shoots the free throws, and continues to play like nothing ever happened. So, and that was, what happened in Utah was the same thing. He's looking at his finger. I don't know, did you ever dislocate your finger when you played football?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my pinky right now is,
So everybody's got their things. Like, I was playing one-on-one with Shrunas Marshallonis when I played for Golden State, and I slapped down on the ball. He was going up to lay it up. I slapped down the ball, and both of my 2 fingers were bent backwards. I mean, like, they were bent like the opposite direction. And, you just run the trainer comes and pulls your finger and puts it back into the socket. And that's what they did in Utah. And Ant just keeps on playing. In fact, he wears that splint on his finger that has the 21 on it.
Oh yeah.
It's one of Kevin Garnett's old finger splints. And, KG kind of tweeted about that too, because Ant had there was a really great photograph of him recently that had that 21 on there. So, everybody's like talking about him and Michael Jordan, but also the love that Kevin Garnett has for Anthony Edwards is pretty fun to watch too.
Yeah, and KG did talk about that he had hurt his finger at some point. He went on a streak, and then he just, even when his fingers were fine, he just kept wearing it. Maybe Anthony does the same thing, because as athletes, and this too, once you kind of get something into your equipment and it feels good, even if you don't need it, you keep it because you're like, you know what? It feels fine. And I like it. Michael Jordan. I mean, we know Michael Jordan's calf sleeve, that became a thing now that everybody wears. But Jordan, said he put it on one time. I forgot what happened. He had like a calf strain, and then he wore it the rest of his career. And that became something that, me as a kid, I wanted the black where I can roll it down and just have a little bit of red showing. Had no idea why, but I'm like, Jordan does it. I want to do it. I did it in football. I remember I hurt my leg in football, and I wore one leg sleeve and the other one I left off. And just because, you see guys like Jordan do it, and now Anthony Edwards is like the new guy for kids to kind of mimic and want to be like. But when you see this, you play for the Rockets, the Kings, the Warriors, and a lot of people today are saying addition by subtraction or subtraction, and then you have addition, however you want to call it. This is pretty much some of the same core guys. The four for sure, and Jay McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, Karl-Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert. You had at that time D'Lo, and it didn't work. You had Mike Conley, and it works. And it's no knock against D'Lo. People are saying D'Lo's just a streaky shooter. He's a guy that can give you 30 one night. He's a guy that can give you 10 turnovers one night. Whereas Mike Conley's more consistent. He's a true floor general. He's a true captain, and he's going to get the ball in the right spots. I saw Anthony Edwards talking about the plus minus of the group and talking about how effective Mike Conley is. Do you think that's really just it? D'Lo just wasn't looking to always be a true point guard at all times, and that's why it probably didn't work?
I don't want to hate on D'Angelo because he's so incredibly talented. But the styles, the personality style, first of all, Rudy and D'Lo did not get along. D'Lo was not a great teammate in terms of communicating the game and trying to make Rudy look good. And there's just how it is with some teammates you just don't jive with, just the personality doesn't match up. And D'Angelo also was not an easy player to coach because D'Angelo is the kind of player, and you played with these guys that thought they had all the answers, and thought they were smarter than the coaches, and would be, somewhat out of line at points, where I just think that's the personality type between D'Angelo Russell and Mike Conley is really night and day in terms of how you manage the personality. Mike is one of the classiest individuals of all time, and I think that the trade that Tim Connelly made to acquire Mike Conley and Nickeil Alexander-Walker might be, if not the best trade, the most important trade that Minnesota ever made, because without Mike, you don't really unlock Rudy. Sure. Mike was a guy that in Utah, they paired up in pick and roll game a bunch. And, the thing that Mike knows too is because he played with Donovan Mitchell in Utah. So he played with the Rudy, Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley sort of, trifecta right there. Those three players had to somehow coexist. And so Mike had to defer to Don all the time. Don was handling it as the point guard. And so you think about Mike coming into this situation with Anthony Edwards. Ant is even different than Don. Don is also in his own way. Sometimes egos don't match up. And so Anthony Edwards, you can tell right now that the way that he leads, Ron, is so impressive. Anthony Edwards' emotional IQ, the way that he gives Karl all the flowers, and he gives Jaden all the credit, and he gives Mike Conley and Chris Finch, he's giving Ant's this great talent, but he's always giving the praise to other people. And so when you talk about Mike Conley, the leadership that he shows and the way that to parts information down to Ant and with the relationship they have and the way that he's unlocked Rudy. If you don't have Mike, it's a completely different situation for this team. So I can't tell you how important that trade was.
Yeah, and Mike Conley, I mean, I've said it numerous times on this show, on different shows I've been on, radio, went on, a couple of national radio spots as well. And same thing, I'm like, Mike Conley is the unsung MVP when you look at his ability to just control the game. I truly believe when Cat was going for 60, 70 points, if Mike Conley plays that game, Cat probably still does it, but they win the game. I guarantee Mike Conley finds a way to get the guys back under control to be like, all right, you got 60 now. Let's go win this game. Whereas without Conley, and the coach said it, Finch said it, like, we kind of got a little out of ourselves out there. We kind of got a little loosey-goosey. We got to get it back together. But when you look at this team and put yourself, you're 6'10", 7 foot. Put yourself in Rudy Gobert's shoes with karl-anthony Towns. Karl-Anthony Towns, in my opinion, when he gets to the top of the key, and he's not going to have to do that as much this game, which is or the series, because he doesn't have to deal with Jokic. But he makes some weird top of the key, back to the basket, no opportunity to score fouls, whether it's a reach around the back, whether it's a bump in the body for no reason, or not understanding, the pick is coming, so let me either plaster and get tighter, or let me back off and then let's show on the other side of this pick. If you're Rudy Gobert, you're Anthony Edwards, even you're the captain or you're the coach because you've coached professional basketball. How do you remind karl-anthony Towns? Because if he had fouled out in this game, the putback dunk, the hustle plays, like those things wouldn't have happened. So how do you explain? Because we know what Anthony Edwards would say. I know you have a little bit more of a vocabulary than Anthony Edwards just says, stop effing fouling. But how would you as a coach or a player kind of remind Karl how important he is? And then also if you're on the floor, if you're a coach and you see, because you can kind of, I don't know if it's me and just because I played sports, I can see when he's about to do something weird because it just doesn't feel right. He's too close. He's reaching and trying to create a turnover versus letting the game just happen. How would you kind of slow him down or remind him to whether it's back off or whether it's, hey, don't reach here or whatever it might be?
Well, he does have a tendency to make plays that are kind of head scratchers for fans and for people that are watching the game, and for me as an analyst watching the game as well. I think that I've had teammates over the years that were incredibly gifted, that especially bigs, centers that I played with that were tall and athletic. Sometimes they get disconnected from their body where they don't really know what they're doing with their off arm. They may be dribbling with the right hand and they don't really know what the left hand is doing. They aren't always conscious of it. And so I know for a fact that the coaches, they show them the video and they try to extinguish the behavior. But Karl is sometimes just so wanting to do the right thing, and he wants to attack and he wants to fit himself through small spaces. And when opponents get into his space, he's, trying to still get by them by clearing them out of the way. Mm-hmm. And sometimes his technique isn't always great. So you try to do the best you can through video work, and you try to remind him. I remember this was last year, a couple of years ago. I forget when it was. It was just recently though, where Karl was coming up to, it was getting to ridiculous levels with technical fouls and complaining to referees, and also with the fouling that was going on. This was about technicals. And so, people would talk to Finch post-game. Hey, have you talked to Karl? Have you showed him the video? And literally Finch is like, yeah, I just talked to him like on the bus. Like I saw him one time, he called Karl up the front of the bus. They had a conversation. We're in San Antonio. Get out the bus, play the game. Karl gets a technical foul in the game, and they ask him post-game, did you talk? I literally just talked to him. Like, they don't think like these coaches communicate to these guys concepts. So it gets frustrating, but you know what? This season and in this playoff run, Karl has been so great. He's played some of the best basketball of his career during this playoff. Think about him defending Kevin Durant and now taking on the MVP and Nikola Jokic and doing an incredible job. You got to give Cat his flowers, man, what he's done on both ends of the floor in this playoff run.
Yeah, and the Pacers seem beatable. The Celtics are without Porzingis, so we'll see how that series goes on the East. But in the West now, it's a different attack. You had Jokic and you had Jamal Murray, and then you had hustle guys like Aaron Gordon, you had Reggie Jackson, different philosophy of game. It was a true team game. You had Michael Porter Jr. that can knock down the three whenever he wants to if he's in rhythm. You look at the Mavs, it's kind of a two-man show. I mean, you got Kyrie, who's one of the best scorers, finishers, ball handlers in the league in basketball history. I mean, it reminds me of Isaiah Thomas sometimes, the way he can get low, the way he can get through holes. And then you think about Luka, which is just he plays at his own pace. It's slow, it's methodical, and it's hard to stop. He can shoot it from behind his head. And so it's like Jokic, but smaller. And it's a tough guy to stop, but he's not 100%. We've seen that. He's not driving as much. He's not, trying to finish at the top of the rim. But for the Timberwolves, I mean, you do have Jaden McDaniels that can guard anybody. You do have, Anthony Edwards that says, I'm a defensive guy. Now, but you have two bigs in Rudy and Karl, who the Mavs don't really play that way. How do you attack that? Like, do you just still play big boy ball like the Spurs and say, you guys figure out how to stop us and then we'll figure it out on defense? Or do you maybe change up and take one of the bigs out and bring Naz Reid in, who's a little bit more of a tweener?
Well, we went 3-1 against the Mavs this year.
Yeah.
Luka didn't play in a couple of those games. But we've seen Luka a lot over the last 3 years with Jaden and now with Nickeil last year and a half once we acquired Nickeil. But, there was a lot made of Minnesota's defense in game 2 against Denver when Rudy didn't play, and they did that stifling defense. And there was the one clip where Jaden and Nickeil hemmed in Jamal Murray, and they had him in jail, and he's trying to find the capacity. It was so frustrating for him. Well, we've got multiple possessions against Dallas. In fact, in a game last year, there was a really famous clip, Ron, where it came down to an end of game situation play for Dallas. They were trying to tie the game up, and they needed a 3-point shot, and Jaden and Ant put the clamps on Kyrie and Luka. It's one of the great defensive stops in Timberwolves history. So we feel like we have the perimeter matchups to be able to deal with Dallas, to be able to deal with Kyrie. If it's me matching up, I would put Ant on Kyrie and try to shut his water off just the way that he did against Jamal Murray. And I would put Jaden on Luka because Jaden's done a great job. You got to have length against Luka. And I kind of like that. I like the comparison you just made between Luka and Jokic, because they're both methodical in their styles. That Luka's not doing it with speed, and neither is Jokic. They're doing it with incredible skill. So Jaden now would be the matchup on Luka, not Karl-Anthony Towns. But you got to deal with PJ Washington, who's a three-point shooter. You got to deal with him. And then Derek Jones Jr. is like a super athlete. And then they've got the two bigs. I mean, Derek Lively, what a great pick. I think that, the Dallas Mavericks should get a lot of credit for what they were able to do in the draft to be able to retain their first-round pick by tanking. They were, because they would have had to give that they would have had to give up that first-round pick if they weren't in the lottery last year. So but they make the selection to Derek Lively, who has been fantastic, great pick and roll partner with Luka. And then the other guy that they were able to acquire, other than PJ Washington, was Daniel Gafford. And Daniel Gafford is the center they got from Washington, who has given Minnesota fits in the past. He's been really good. He's, a 6'10", 6'11", super athletic center, great pick and roll partner, very physical around the rim. He went to Arkansas. So Rudy and Karl are going to have their hands full between Gafford and Lively, trying to keep them away from the rim, and also with PJ Washington and his three-point shooting. So that's going to be a concern. So the question is, who does Mike guard? That's the question with this Dallas Mavericks team. And I'm going to put Mike on Derek Jones Jr., even though, they call him, what do they call him? They call him airplane mode because, he's got that to high fly. So I probably put Mike on Derek Jones. I put Karl on PJ Washington, and I put Rudy Gobert on Derek Lively. And then when Daniel Gafford comes in, he'll probably get some Naz Reid minutes on him. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it, but I think this is a great matchup for Minnesota.
And, of course, nationally, everybody's talking about, you don't have a Nuggets team in there now. You don't have a Suns. You don't have a Warriors. You don't have the names you're used to. This is a new era, whether it was going to be the Thunder or the Mavs. I felt like the Timberwolves were going to be in this. And now the Timberwolves have a chance to go to the NBA final. You're hosting. So now you're not playing the 1 seed in the Thunder. You're playing the Mavs. You are the head honcho with the 3 seed. How do you mentally stay in this series and not think ahead when everybody now is kind of giving the tip? Because before it was always like, oh, the Nuggets are going to beat them. Oh, the Suns are going to kill them. Now it's like the Timberwolves can go to the final and play the Celtics or the Pacers. How do you, as a former player, as a coach, as an analyst, and then, if you put yourself in that mode as a coach, how do you remind your players the work's not done yet?
One of the mantras for this team is stay humble. And I think that because they have not done anything, this team has got a history. It's been 35 years of just lack of success and building a true culture of winning. And it's one of the things that Chris Finch has done with this organization, and he's creating a culture of winning and accountability. And so I think that his voice in that locker room, and you've heard some of the great comments. It's not just Ant. Ant just had some last night in Denver after Game 7 about Finch, but you've heard players talk about it since he's been here. His command of the locker room, his willingness to go at the star players. There's a lot of coaches who make they make an example of a lesser player by yelling and screaming at them to make the point to the star versus just talking to the star directly. And that's what Finch does. He talks to him directly. You've seen coaches that have done that, Ron. And so Finch just has no problem regulating in the locker room. The other thing I would say too is that, and this is really important, and I would love to get your perspective on this because, when you're playing, your college career goes by like that. And my NBA career, even though I played 8 years, it goes by like that. And my second year in the league, we went to the NBA finals. And when you're playing with a young group of superstars like Akeem Olajuwon and Ralph Sampson, you think you're going to get back to the Western Conference finals and finals multiple times. And we went my second year with Olajuwon, his second year, Sampson's third year. We beat the Lakers in the Western Conference finals to play the Celtics. And we thought we would get back multiple times. Well, we never got back with that team. Olajuwon did get back twice, but you realize you only get so many bites at the apple. And so when you're on a team that has a chance to win a championship, you've got to really take advantage of the opportunity. And so Mike Conley had this great talk before the playoffs started that look, we made the Western Conference championship finals, 12 years ago when I was at Memphis, and we thought we'd get back and we never have. He goes, I know that my career, I'm at the end of my career right now, but you guys need to meet me at my level right now. You guys need to do this for me. And so I think that rallying cry is keeping this team humble, Ron. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Mike and these young guys, it's hard to get them to understand that these moments are fleeting and they aren't always going to, the opportunities aren't going to always be here. And when you get a chance, you've got to take advantage. And so I think that's one of the things that helped them win that game against Denver in Game 7 was they stayed focused, they stayed together. And you can see the energy on the bench with the Timberwolves. How great was the Wolves bench and coaching staff when they were making their run? Everybody's standing up, and the Denver bench was completely silent down there. So, anyway, what do you think about that in terms of how fast your career goes by, and in retrospect, opportunities that you may have missed because you didn't understand the moment when you were younger?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, even looking at the Pistons, I was blessed to grow up with the bad boys, and they win a couple of times, and then Ben Wallace and the guys did it, and then the Pistons haven't done anything since. And so I guarantee, some guys that were on the tail end of the Ben Wallace era probably assumed the same thing, they built this before, they're going to keep building it, and they haven't been able to build it since. I think Mike Conley hit the nail on the head, and Ray Lewis did that with the Ravens his last year. When he was leaving, he kind of told the guys, look, I'm not doing this for a farewell tour. I'm doing this because I've been here once, and there's not a guarantee we're going to go again. So this is our time. And so then you just saw that defense take another step, and they, the guys start playing harder, the guys start working longer. ESPN start talking about that, the number of hours the players are putting in without coaches. I'm guaranteeing Mike Conley's probably doing that. And you're right. Like Anthony Edwards probably realizes that, him and Karl-Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, it's only so long stars can stay together. The Warriors are one of the few to find ways to continue to do it over and over and over again because of selflessness. Also, because Draymond realizes I can go somewhere else, but am I going to get what I'm getting here with the Warriors? Probably not. And I think that's where the Timberwolves are. Like this group, who knows how long they can stay together. But as strong as the West is, as quick as basketball changes, it's going to be tough. The one thing I'm going to say about sticking together, Micah Nori has kind of put his name on the map now. Do you think now GMs and owners are seeing what he's doing while Chris Finch has to sit behind the bench, and he's a potential guy that could become a next head coach for somebody?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because like you're getting to see him operate as the head coach without being the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
So his reputation precedes him. He was a really respected coach for the Toronto Raptors when he spent many years in Toronto, and then he's kind of bounced around from between Sacramento and the Denver Nuggets as well, and now with Minnesota. So I mean, Micah is just a highly respected guy, and he and Chris Finch are simpatico when it comes to in-game adjustments and game planning and such. And he's such a great teacher too, because when you watch him at practice, he's got just a great coaching voice, so he's able to, and how important that is as a coach, to be able to project, be confident, be concise, make it so that it's understandable and not confusing, because coaches can be sometimes confusing when they aren't that way. And also then he's hilarious. So, humor is always really important when you're talking about coaching these young guys, being able to, relate to them and make them laugh. He's just, I on the one hand, I kind of don't want to lose him, but on the other hand, he's such a great coach. He deserves an opportunity. So it's a little disrespectful to me when I see JJ Redick, who's just retired, has not been a coach. He coached his kid name. But he's never spent any time, on somebody's bench as an assistant. At least Chauncey spent a little time as an assistant. JJ's not done that. He's been an analyst. So to be able to think you can jump from like playing to being a head coach in the NBA is a little disrespectful to the guys that have paid their dues, like Micah Nori.
Yeah, that is true. A lot of people are equating the JJ Redick effect to LeBron James, maybe doing the podcast with LeBron, being tied in with Clutch Sports a little bit, and them trying to maybe find a way to get him to coach LeBron, which is not going to work. But I know a lot of people are looking at that too. Like, how is this possible for him to just, all of a sudden go from nothing to getting jobs? We've seen that in the NFL though too. Josh McCown, never coached before, all of a sudden start getting, opportunities and emails about it. Dan Orlovsky now, and he should go coach. He's never coached before. So you're right. There are a lot of coaches that put a lot of time and work in. They pay their dues. They work their way up. And then, there's some people that just come out of nowhere, and owners are willing to just give them an interview, whether it's media, whether it's friendship, who knows what. But one quick one before we get out of here. When you look at this Timberwolves team and you look at this state of Minnesota, and the question, this is probably a curveball, funny one though, and I don't know, it might happen. If the Celtics play the Timberwolves, do you think that finally will get KG into the building in Minnesota? Because he represents both.
I hope so. I really do hope so, Ron. He did come back for a game, and I don't really remember when it was. It was a couple of 2-3 years ago. He wore like the throwback. He wore the one City Edition jersey. It was the Prince Edition jersey with the 99 on there. He did make an appearance at Target Center, and he's been to a number of Lynx games, I think, over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I hope he does, because I think for sure we're going to see him in Boston. But I really hope for our fan base he would come back to Minnesota, because he's so beloved here. And the memories that we have from 20 years ago of going to the Western Conference Finals and playing the Lakers in the conference finals. Mm-hmm. I hope that he does come back at some point. And if we do get to the finals, which would be amazing, and it is the Celtics, that would be really special at KG in the building.
And do you think the state or the city of Minnesota is prepared for a possible championship downtown Minneapolis? Like, do you think the police force and I know Philly greased the poles, so their fans wouldn't climb the street lights and all. Like, do you think Minnesota fans will be kind of like tamed, or do you think this will be all out, like just euphoria of downtown? Like, they would have to, like, I don't know what they would have to do. Close the bridge down. I have no idea. But do you think Minnesota will survive a championship?
That's a great question. That's a great question, Ron. I don't know the answer to that question. All I know is like seriously, I wish you could have been at the game last night. We're recording this after, the Game 7 in Denver, and there were so many Timberwolves fans. There had to have been 3,000 or 4,000 Timberwolves fans at that game. It was so loud. And then post-game, Michael Grady's Instagram, you can go to it and see when Karl and Ant were on the Wolves bench end, and that's where the vast majority of them were over there. But then also, I mean, they were scattered all throughout the arena, but there were so many behind the Wolves bench and the Wolves bench end. And during the game, when the Wolves were doing stuff, I mean, they were exploding. It was almost like a home game for Minnesota. I had a headset on, I could still hear them cheering. And so they travel well. So I think that, to your point, this fan base is super excited, super energized. It's the NBA. I love Timberwolves Twitter. It's just been so great to interact with our fan base. I just love it. And I just really hope that they don't go crazy if Minnesota were ever to win a championship downtown Minneapolis. Cops, man. I mean, come on. I love you, but man, you got a tough show down there. It's just a condensed area too, right there by Target Field and Target Center. So I don't know. You know what? I want to find out.
I do too, and I feel like what's the bar? 7 bar car. Like, they would have to reopen, or something would have to, like, they have to get all those buildings open for after parties, because like I know Bella Notte is not a thing anymore, but like the W Hotel, like they would have to be prepared, because people are probably willing to drink until 5 a.m. and treat it like Las Vegas. So I would hope that the governor and the mayor and the city officials all like approve, like, you can sell liquor until like 8 a.m. the next day or something, because I could seriously, it could be a Vegas feeling downtown Minneapolis. Nice weather out, and they might end up being crowned NBA champions. We'll see. And maybe they do it in 6 against the Celtics. Maybe they don't even have to go to Boston. They can win it in Minnesota in front of their home crowd. But the fact that even get a Western Conference, if it does go to 7, is going to be in Minnesota, and then a championship in Minnesota. I think people are super excited for it. I know all the fan bases, PJ Fleck and the Gophers are going to do some kind of one Minnesota thing eventually, because everybody wants to try to show their recruits. Ben Johnson over at Minnesota, I'm pretty sure they're going to start to inject this into their veins to make sure their recruits see, like, hey, you can go to Penn State, but are you going to have this atmosphere right now? If I'm a coach recruiting college students, I'm bringing them to town for these games, because this is what Minnesota could look like if you were to win a Big Ten championship for football or basketball, or maybe a national championship. So I hope PJ Fleck and Ben Johnson, and Dawn Plitzer-White, I hope they're taking advantage of this and bringing these kids to town. But I'm Ron Johnson. That's Jim Peterson. I want to appreciate you for joining me today on the Hang with Ron Johnson segment. And up next, we got the Daily 3. That's 3 questions, 3 minutes each. We'll do that after the word from our sponsors. Well, now it's time for the Daily 3. Take it away, Sam.
All right, we've talked a lot of Wolves. Let's look at the other side of the bracket in the East. The Pacers upset the Knicks. So the 6th seed Indiana Pacers go to play the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Finals. Will the Pacers challenge the Celtics in that series?
I think they can. The Kristaps Porzingis injury to the Celtics, I mean, it doesn't change that Jaylen Brown, and you still got Jason Tatum. But as far as size, we know the Pacers' size in the middle, that kind of helped them down the stretch in the Knicks game, even though Jalen Brunson going out was a big loss. But yeah, I think the Pacers can, and I hope, because either way, you want that Eastern Conference team to not finish fast so that they're tired coming into the championship if it is the Timberwolves. And so let's hope that they push it. But I think the Pacers, if they can get some early games and steal one. But a lot of people are already saying the Celtics have an easy road. Like they say the Knicks losing, Jalen Brunson being out. It's the Celtics to lose now.
Yeah, on one hand, the Celtics will have had that easy road. On the other hand, I'm not sure they will have been tested at all. I'm not sure that they'll have faced a team like Minnesota once. I mean, the Heat without Butler, the Cavs who were missing all their guys in the closeout game, and now Indiana. I feel like that might actually bode well for the Wolves somehow. We'll see how it goes if the Wolves win, of course. Reports indicate, Ron, that TJ Hockenson will be starting the year on the PUP list. We suspected this, but they recently signed Robert Tonyan, the former Packers and Bears tight end. So do you have belief that Johnny Munt, Josh Oliver, and Robert Tonyan can hold things down while Hockenson is out?
I think so. I think Robert Tonyan, that addition gives you a veteran tight end who's played with a guy like Aaron Rodgers who knows a passing system. So I think that was part of that pickup. When you get him back, TJ Hockenson, though, it'll be interesting to see who gets either released or put maybe down on practice squad or who else gets released on the team at that point, because you can't really carry 4 tight ends once TJ Hockenson comes off the PUP. So I think Robert Tonyan is kind of planned for his career with the Vikings. Like if he has early success, I don't see the Vikings feeling like they can just let him go when TJ Hockenson is back. But yeah, we all knew that was coming. I think they can hold it down. I don't think they will be needed as much because Justin Jefferson and we already saw with Addison and Jefferson, you got to find ways to get both of them a lot of balls. And so I think this changed that. And you have Aaron Jones, who now you really can run the ball too.
It's a lot of cooks in the kitchen too. I don't know if Munt and Tonyan both make the team, because then when Hockenson comes back, you've got 4 veterans. I feel like they might be competing for a spot. At least when Hockenson comes back, maybe only one of them survives. But last one, we didn't get to this in the roundtable on Friday, so I got to get your take on it. The whole Scottie Scheffler arrest saga at the PGA Championship. What did you make of it?
Well, I'm waiting for more information to come out, to be honest, because now they're saying the cop was wrong. His body cam wasn't on. Scottie Scheffler also, though, like I still stick with if there's traffic and you can see the entrance, just get out the car. Like, you are a professional millionaire golfer. If you get out the car and walk and like just walk to where you're trying to get to, I'm pretty sure somebody can go put your flashers on. Somebody can go get your car. And they can bring it in once it's clear. You can get your – I mean, you can go get your caddy. Hey, go get my golf clubs. I'm going to go get dressed and get ready to warm up and play. But no, you spent 4 to 5 hours in jail because you just like – and again, somebody else said other golfers were waved ahead to say go on the shoulder and go. So allegedly, like maybe one cop told those guys down there to do it. But then this cop didn't know. So he who knows? There's a lot to this. I'm hearing both sides of the story. So I'm going to wait for more information to come out. Because the charges, it looks like were dropped, or I don't know, whatever, but it says something like figured out. So we'll see what happens, what comes out, whether the cop didn't communicate with the other cop and maybe it could have been handled differently if he had wanted to talk to the other cop. But once a cop interacts with your car, you never just keep driving. You always stop the car. I think that's the end of the answer right there. Like, even if you are right, once a cop says stop, you just stop. And then you wait for him to figure it out, and then you keep going. So I think that was the issue. Like, him keeping going, that's the problem. You're wrong.
Exactly.
There. No matter what another cop told you, when another cop stops you, you can't say, hey, man, your boy told me to go, I'm going to go. No, like, you wait for that cop to now figure it out. So, yeah, he was wrong there.
Yeah, it's very hard when it's dark and rainy for me to perceive my surroundings. I don't always see the things clearly. There's glare, there's darkness. It's hard to understand what's going on. So I get his confusion, but you hit it on the nose. If you sense that someone is hanging onto your car or trying to get your attention, you probably should hit the brake.
Right. Yep. And that's the end of the show for today. I'm Ron Johnson at Sam Ekstrom. Make sure you go to our YouTube 24/7 live stream for your favorite Minnesota sports shows around the clock. It's Vikings, Wild, Wolves, Twins, Gophers at all hours of the day. And basketball party tomorrow. We're going to be excited about this one because the Timberwolves have a chance. They have a chance to go to the Super Bowl of basketball. I've been saying this all season, and it might come true. I'm Ron Johnson at Sam Ekstrom, and have a great week, people.